Welcome to The Authentic Life with KL, the podcast where we throw out the rule book, where we dive in head first to the real and raw, unapologetic journey of living the best life. That includes lots of music. This is your go-to space for empowerment, for deep healing and owning your authenticity like the boss that you are. We're here to break down walls and slay self-doubt. Vibe to the soundtrack of your soul. Every beat and lyric will move through stories that heal and empower. You can live your fullest and most badass life. Welcome to The Authentic Life with KL. Hey, it's Kitty. Today I have Dustin with me from the band Groucho from right here in Tulsa. And I appreciate you coming on so much.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be here. I love what the podcast is, focusing on, and there's a service to others, and that kind of gravitates towards, or I kind of gravitate towards that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And anytime you need support, I mentioned from Tulsa because I had this little aha moment with my husband. I was going through the calendar and I was saying, okay, I'm doing this. And then Groucho. And he said, wait, who? And I said, Groucho. And he pointed down at his shirt and he was like, and I was
That's
like,
amazing.
what's wrong? And he was like, because he is a big merchandise person. So anytime we go somewhere and there's bands playing, and we can talk about this later too, but the way that most bands receive any kind of anything really anymore is merchandise.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so he always tries to do that. So I love that little story of that connection, because when you and I first talked, it didn't really click, but he was like,
That's awesome.
I
That makes me
have
really
his
happy.
shirt.
Yeah, I've got some back here, just chilling, and it's got to go somewhere, but that's
Yeah.
what helps us get from town to town. And we might have a small guarantee from a club or, payout or stuff like that, but in reality, you sell 5 or 6 shirts in a different town, and you've got enough food for the band and fuel and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
if you want to go that route, you definitely need to be able to make a little extra scratch on the road. So
Yeah, yeah, I
super
love
cool.
that. It just made my heart happy because he was like, "Yeah, I have that shirt. You didn't even know. See, you didn't even know that I have this shirt." And I was like, "No, I really did."
That's great. I've learned to pay attention to like synchronicity and stuff like that, and and just sort of maybe listen a little longer whenever something like that happens. You talk
Yeah.
about a movie you haven't seen in 10 years, and then you see it mentioned 30 minutes later.
Yep.
That actually just happened to me and my girlfriend last night. We were kind of, it's nothing to consult a witch about or anything, but
Yeah.
I do notice when the universe is speaking just a little bit, and so
Listen,
I
you're
find that very
speaking
rewarding.
to the right person on that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm a universe person. Absolutely. I teach on a lot of different things. A lot of mental health, but I do teach a lot on, the synchronicities and how, well, I don't know. Music is a universal language, but the universe speaks to you in all these wild ways, and that only if you're open to it do you really, um, I guess, comprehend it or see it. So,
I could not agree more. I yeah, I whenever I quit drinking, I was in that very like what's next kind of phase of mine. And the open door policy has led me as far as I could, further than I could have ever imagined. Like,
mhm.
an opportunity presents itself and you just say yes and all that stuff. But the synchronicity thing, and I'm not really sure what is taking place there. I don't think that the finite mind can process the infinite,
Oh,
but you can appreciate,
yeah.
when something like that is happening. And yeah, I see a lot of value in not just writing it off. It doesn't have to be a big moment, but you can just, it's like a subtle nod sometimes that
Yeah,
they're,
that's what I think. It's kind of like a tap on the shoulder of like, hey, got
P.S.
you,
Yeah,
and
don't
things like
forget,
that.
this is all a construct, and
Yeah.
you're in here learning lessons. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Everybody has such layers that I talk to, right? We all have different layers and things like that. But what is something about you that a lot of people may not know? I know that there's the stage presence whenever you're there, and then there's the people that know you, and there's a lot in between. So what is
Hmm.
something that people may not know?
Something that people may not know about me is that I'm a massive nerd. I think just the way the body I was dealt, and sometimes my demeanor, um, I look like a guy who listens to Joe Rogan or something. I look like a bro. And I've noticed that when people get to know me, they're always sort of like really surprised that I have gone out of my way to watch like every episode of Star Trek, or
Sure.
that there's a layer below, and we're wearing this like skin suit and all that stuff. And I will admit I grew up like wrestling and boxing and all that stuff, but I would like to think that what people don't know about me is that I am multi-layered, and that I am a very compassionate person, to
Mm.
almost to a fault, to trusting other people at some point in time. So yeah, that does not come through in my stage presence.
Yeah.
It doesn't come through in a lot of my waking life until a person kind of breaks through that, the formalities or whatever, because there's not any room for it. I've tried to interject it before in conversations, and this is a great place to just open up about that stuff. But
Yeah.
like the other night, I was running audio on a film crew. So sometimes I work in post and production, and it was a comedy thing. And I was just there literally to capture the audience sound and the vocal mic, and they're going to, put it together in post. Anyway, so I'm talking with this other person on set, and she's one of the camera people. And immediately I veered into like consciousness, or one of those, ill-defined areas. And I watched that person just like, they don't even know what to do with that kind of stuff. And then if they've
Mm.
not got there, it's not a hierarchy of interest or anything, but I've learned as to keep that stuff
Yeah.
kind of quiet, because it's just hard for a lot of people to process. They're probably just want to go home and watch The Amazing Race or something, and I'm over here thinking about like, the nature of existence, or what's the DMT realm, or yada yada yada. So I
I
think
know.
that
I
doesn't
love that.
I don't
I
think that comes
do.
through a lot with me. So yeah, that's my
I
answer. But
that's my I think that's my favorite kind of people, because I just love so much. They're like, what do you like to do for fun? Well, I like to go to concerts, but it's really people-y, right?
sure.
So
Oh
it's
yeah.
like I love to sit out underneath the stars and have like really deep conversations that really most people don't, but it's all so intertwined and it's so interesting to think about, I think.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to catch those people in passing. So a lot of times you kind of have to have that like lull,
Yeah.
or that sort of, yeah, that space where you can kind of get a little deeper below the surface and kind of see
Yeah.
what's going on over there. When I was a child, I know this is almost like the same thing a sociopath would say, but like I would look at people and I was like, are they in there? Like,
Yeah.
is there a person in there, or like, is this all like an illusion? You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I think now on the other side of processing that, I've learned that was the beginning of empathy. I
Hmm.
was, starting to understand like, okay, does this, but I don't know a lot of 5, 6, or however old I was. I don't know a lot of kids that had those types of thoughts
Yeah.
and stuff. And so eventually I learned like comedy and other stuff like that to kind of make people like you. And
Yeah.
that's just masking. And I'm a funny guy if I need to be or whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, we
yeah,
we we all have those. We all have those different masks that we hold, and that's I think the authentic life is really when I teach within the group and things like that. We're like, what does it take? What is the cost for not being authentic? And it's the cost of your authenticity. So I mean,
yeah,
it's very expensive. And while you were talking there just a second ago, you said, when there's a lull and we can talk, then you kind of get to know people. And it's like maybe that's why everything's so fast all the time, because if we do slow down and we talk to people, then that fast stuff's not really that important. But the world is just so fast, just to keep everybody, I think, maybe separated a little bit more.
so I'm going to ask you a question. Do you believe that it's by design, or do you believe that it's like a Lord of the Flies scenario? I mean, I have those thoughts, and I'm not going to say I think one way or the other, but I think about that stuff, exactly what you just said. Like, is it designed to keep people distracted? I mean,
I
you,
do think, I think a lot of the things, I, I think it's a blend maybe of everything for me, because I think that there's definitely those like placeholder people that
mm,
that are just there that really aren't any deeper than um deeper and it's just face value for them. I really I think the possibilities are so endless. And I think that's what makes me so inquisitive on it because it's like, are we here in a matrix? Is there certain people chosen to do this? Are we asleep now and awake on the other side? Like,
Sure.
there's so many things. I know enough about it that I feel like I'm this spiritual person and I'm a person here to help, not physically and heal people, but to hold space for people to expand.
Mm.
And I think if more people would expand and more people had safe places to tell their story, that a lot of the things that we don't know, like, is this how it is, that a lot
Sure.
of it would just dissipate and fall.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's beginning to change.
Yeah.
People, people that I never would have suspect I'll get that text message from, I got a question from my buddy. He's a doctor the other day, and we've kind of had a lot of debate over, all kinds of stuff, ancient history, stuff like that. But it was just like, hey, on a 1 to 10, are aliens here? And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it's an 11, dude, but people are starting to wake up to a larger
Mm-hmm.
reality for better or worse. And then one of the problems in that space, and by the way, like a real moment of gratitude. I love what you're doing. I
Oh, thank
understand,
you.
and you're holding court, but you're not trying to be
Yeah.
the queen, right? You're providing an area for people to have difficult conversations or
Yeah.
to kind of wade through the muck. One problem I've faced with telling people, those are my interests and that's like my behavior outside of here, is how many people throughout history have done that for the purpose of, I don't know, selling snake oil or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and I'm kind of starting to see a lot of that fade away. And I truly believe that, that more genuine interest is, I just saw a paper the other day that literally, supported the idea that consciousness is non-local. So what they're saying is that, through quantum fluctuation of however they're trying to describe it, they're literally saying what like Buddhist, mystics were saying 5,000 years ago.
Everything's connected.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And science is the answer to how, it's not the answer to who
Yeah.
or why. And that's just been the best way that I've known how to process a lot of that information, because I'm still super interested in, like,
Mm.
how a galaxy's formed or blah, blah, blah.
Sure. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's so many possibilities. And I have a group on Facebook. It's a small group that we're growing, but it's called Blend Your Spirit. And the
Mhm.
whole reason for that is because for me, everything has to be connected. There's no way that it's not. And it's just a safe place for people to come and kind of explore. Like we have dream interpretation, we have, Reiki, we have shadow worker. I help like heal and navigate through trauma and grief and all those things, just stuff that like humans go through that nobody really talks about.
Sure.
And it's just everybody coming together, kind of having that same thought and same experience through maybe different eyes, maybe that's
Yeah, a different lens for sure. What
yeah.
was it? What was the group called again? I'm sorry.
It's called Blend Your Spirit. I can shoot you over the information. Um,
I'll just
I
join.
host retreats and things like that to where we do all those different things. And so my ultimate goal is to take it on the road and host, conventions or take this, have a bus or something and have this in it, but then go around and like
Yeah,
hold space for people and say, hey, did you know? Here's a
sure.
toolbox. Pick something that works for you. It's
I think
not
that's great.
for everybody. Thank you. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
think that's fantastic, actually. So,
What inspires you to create the music that you create? Because when I listen to it, I could definitely pick out maybe different inspirations or maybe different bands, maybe that here and there you were connected to. But it felt like there was a whole bunch of different emotions, different ones for each songs, right? So talking about a toolbox, it's like, okay, here's this one, here's this one. What are your musical inspirations for all of this?
um, for me, music is kind of one of those things that you just can't not,
Yeah.
you know? And so with Groucho, I think that it's kind of easy to kind of pick up some of the inspiration, so like it's going to range from like Harry Nilsson to Tool.
Hmm.
And I would like to think like my inspiration is being present.
Mm.
And I was having this conversation with someone, just the other day. We were talking about non-traditional meditation and music. That is what I do.
Hmm.
I am capable of grabbing a guitar and talking and maybe I'm muscle memory riffing or something, or but then stopping and being like, oh shit, what was that?
Yeah.
Um, or it's like I mean this truly, during the worst times of my life, I would reach for a guitar. During the best times of my life, I might reach for a piano. And it's cheesy, but I grew up in a household with my mom like opening the blinds on Saturday morning and singing the Beatles and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And it's really just the one way that I know how to connect. I with I'm trying not to jump too far into the deep end, but I don't think that consciousness is limited to biology.
Hmm.
And throughout time, people have tried to personify these things, and like the Greeks or the Romans. I actually understand how they got there, like to naming it of the goddess of love or my
Hmm.
muse or whatever. But I view that as like a channeling kind of thing.
Hmm.
I did not create it. I was the conduit.
Yeah.
And I get to take credit in this, and that's great. But
Yeah.
um, I guess that's really a roundabout answer for me. It helps me connect, and it helps me, do whatever. And so the last thing I'll say on that subject is, once I started moving into different genres, because I also compose music for like film and TV and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Once I stopped being like, well, that's not really rock music, because Groucho's kind of at heart like a grunge rock kind of thing. It let me like open up in ways that I would not even have dreamed a decade ago. I'm making like spaghetti western music or
Hmm.
whatever else, and whenever I'm doing that, when I'm creating, I am 100% present. I'm not like worrying, and I'm not,
Yeah.
thinking about that thing you said in the seventh grade that just, so
All right.
that's my true inspiration, is pursuit of happiness. And if I had to say it in a single sentence,
I love that. I feel that so much. And when you talked a little bit about channeling, I the people in my group all the time are like, is that channeled or is that something you said? And
mm,
I think that people use that word as a scary word, right? They're
sure,
like, oh, you're channeling. Oh my goodness, you're channeling. But I think that and you probably do the same thing when I call it dropping in, is what I call it. And that could be meditation. It could be just whenever I'm centering and I'm
sure,
dropping in and making myself available to the universe. And then I'm able to write some things. I'm not a music or a songwriter, but like the other day, I wrote bios for the lead core group that we're moving forward with within our group. And they were like, wow. And I was like, it's not me.
sure.
I'm just like writing what I know needs to be said. And I think that so many times the word channel is such a scary word. I think all of this stuff is so scary to people,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's the most beautiful thing to be able to experience it, I think.
The idea of channeling was probably the most bitter pill for me to swallow.
Mm.
Because like, I think that it's very important to talk about charlatans in this space. And I'm not here to call anybody out. I'm
Sure.
not saying this person, that person. I'm just saying, there is a self-service that can just like the ego, and it can take over, and or a person has, for whatever reason, and a legitimate delusion, and so
Yeah.
um, for me, that one was one that I had to, and I've seen what I'm not going to like layer it and say, well, this is kind of channeling and this is
Sure.
real channeling, but I've seen some stuff before in my lifetime that there's no way that information was local,
Yeah.
you know. And I don't know if you've seen any kind of studies where they've taken like DNA samples off people when they're in the channel state, but I mean that's enough to upset a very skeptical individual.
I
Where
haven't. See, now that'll send me down a rabbit hole.
yes, it will. Yeah, I I I learned about it through a gentleman from the UFO topic, and I can tell you about it off camera. I'm not sure he would want me saying his name, but
Sure.
he's a very prominent person that I just sent an email to one time because I felt compelled, and
Hmm.
I don't know how else to describe that. And the conversation that we had was like, whoa, well, I was waiting on this. I didn't. And I'm serious, and it was
Yeah.
upsetting to me. Like, I mean, and I still have trouble processing some of that.
Yeah.
But now I find myself in an opportunity making music for
Hmm.
some of those really high quality productions over the disclosure movement. And that's something that I can do. I can't contribute $1,000 a month to their awareness campaign,
Sure.
but I can elevate the production of what they're doing, or participate rather. And
Sure.
now I have I found myself with a purpose in this thing that's extremely important to me.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know, I've learned not to care, but it's
Yeah.
not like nihilism as much as it's just sort of, that's fascinating. Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, and I think being so attached to things is very hard. I think that's something that I learned is I know not caring is I think for me it's like not caring isn't it necessarily the word like I would use for myself, but trying to not care would be me trying not to be attached to outcomes or attached to if this is this or if this is going to happen, those
Sure.
kind of things, because I think that's when we hold those expectations and we're constantly let down. But
Oh
I
yeah.
do believe in something so much bigger, and I think that we have a part to play in it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think we have some part to play, and I think our part is listening to what we're, listening and making decisions and all those things. So
The attachment thing is very difficult, and
it
I
is.
struggle with that a lot because I've put so much work into something
Mhm.
or whatever. And if you take the avenue of the Buddha, or whatever, the goal is to get out of the house. It's to stop the cycle of
Yeah.
infinite reincarnation. So,
Mm.
and you can't do that when you're hanging on to whatever.
Oh
And
gosh, I know
I
it.
don't know if I'm yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I'm aware of it, and
No,
we'll see, right?
I think that I honestly think just being aware is one of the strongest, like I think the strongest people when you understand and you're like, I'm aware of it.
Mm.
And yet you can then make a choice like, I'm going to look further into it, or at least I'm aware of it, because there are so many people that just aren't aware. Right. And they don't
Sure.
want to be aware. And honestly, sometimes I wish I wasn't aware any,
Um, I hopelessly self-aware is the way I used to describe my original foray into some of this stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
understand.
sometimes wish I wasn't, because my husband's like, don't you want to just like go work a regular job and then like be normal? And I'm like, no, but yeah, kind of sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. There's yeah, I won't even elaborate. I know what you're saying and I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Do you have a song out of your songs, the plethora of songs that you've written, that is going to hold more sentimental or significant value for you on some of the things that you've gone through?
So yes, it's actually part of a 3-song like EP, and it's just titled "The Truth Is Out There," and it's about pretty much what you think it is. It's about being aware of the they, and all these ill-defined things. But um, I've had legitimate people reach out and explain like, "Oh, that was really powerful for me because they are an experiencer." And please believe me, like I've been there. I've been the guy that was lifted out of flatland and dropped back in, and I'm just supposed to go to work tomorrow. Are you serious? And
Yeah.
I've made a lot of really really cool connections based off of that song. People that have entered into my life. I was nervous to publish it because my side into spiritualism is it does come from experiences that people would call non-human intelligence, or some people might call an alien, or
Mhm.
that was kind of like my real interest. It wasn't a tap on the shoulder from the universe; it was a punch in the face. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to write a song over that subject, and I flirted with, well, how subtle do you be, or should you just title it,
Yeah.
the truth is out here. And that's the one. The lyrics for me, and comically I sort of float around, like I will joke and say it's postmodern nihilism, but that's also because like you can't care too much.
Mhm.
um, it's all I'm not it's not an illusion that it doesn't matter. I'm just I'm fully aware that that reality, so to speak, is like a multifaceted layer.
Yeah.
We're on the top layer of the cake right now, and people are fighting over resources and land and all that stuff. And we don't need to do any of that. I
Right.
mean, I don't probably need to tell you or your listeners, and so that was me sort of poking the bear.
Hmm.
Um, and then, yeah, there's another song in that EP called Blood in the Water that is just more of an aggressive thing about just manufactured divide. And that EP has been a really good for us. It was really well produced, and I'm grateful for that side of it. But I was in a state of my mind where I was more than willing to just say, well, here it is. Because other
Hmm.
than that, I would write almost sort of like deliberately, I don't know, not ambiguous, but like, I don't want to take a big stance on this or that, or
Yeah,
there's a element of humor in, in this or that. And so, but yeah, that's my genuine answer. And that actual song has opened up a lot of participation for me in that space and getting involved in some of those discussions because,
I like that.
yeah, people
I
find it
listened.
on
I
accident.
did listen to the Blood in the Water song. So
Mm,
yeah, yeah, I think I really uh I appreciate lyrics,
same.
a lot. I'm a lyric person. So some of my friends that are in the music industry and they're like, "Oh, yeah, how about these lyrics?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes, yes, yes." Like I love it. I think it's something special when someone can have an experience and they can write this beautiful story or journey to take you on it because it is like meditation for me as well. I've never been able to sit quietly and idle and meditate. So to me, music is kind of like a guided meditation sometimes, or it
Sure.
takes me places, that my mind that my mind might take me.
Yeah.
Just it's easier whenever there's this script already there. So
Well, I take the lyrics part really seriously because during some of the darkest times of my life is not a coincidence that I was listening to, I don't know, I won't even name any bands, you know.
sure.
And in the rock and roll world, I think there is way too much celebration of pity.
Hmm.
A lot of the lyrics on modern radio stuff, it's all about substance abuse
Hmm.
and whatever else. And so having raged against the machine that was myself
Yeah.
through ego, and um, I had confused rebellion to a system that doesn't serve us with self-destruction.
Mm.
I liked that romantic aspect of just kind of being, a party or drunk or whatever.
Yeah.
None of this matters, and that destroyed not only my life but my immediate surroundings. And
Yeah.
so now, being awake to that reality, I really try to go out of my way to never really write anything that would a person in the worst time of their life would really latch onto,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It does. It does because I am a big fan of manifesting however people look at that. I believe that the words that we sing and the words that we speak, that they are powerful. And I think that other energies know how powerful we could be.
Oh yeah.
And I think that us as humans, if we're humans, I always say I'm from another planet. There's no way I'm from here. There's
Fully
no
relate.
way.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't choose to come here for sure. But I believe that the things that we speak and the things that we say, the things that we sing, I think there's a reason why when we're super pissed off and we're screaming hateful songs, that it continues to make us pissed off, right?
Sure.
And when we're sad and we're listening to a song that's sad, it brings forth those emotions, and so it really does like it's just definitely like a manifestation of energy or emotion whenever you're listening to it. And so when you get caught up in these cyclical songs that have a lot of terrible things in it, it's going to stay with you.
I know you. I fully support that idea. I try to marry some of the aggressive music with like a juxtaposition of hopefully insightful lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I
Yeah.
mean, I get it, man. I love a rowdy rock song.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. I'm all about that.
Me too. Like I
Yeah.
love my favorite angry song is Going Down from the Sick Puppies. Like when I'm really angry, like that's the song that I would put on. Now I haven't put it on in a really long time, but it's just it is and it does connect with those emotions with us. And if you don't want those emotions to stay, then you gotta
Yeah. There's a
switch up.
time and a place. Yeah. And there's a
Yeah.
cathartic avenue to that too. It's okay to be
Yeah.
pissed off.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's terrible to live pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of piqued my interest with this. I have a friend who is coming up, and I think it was 15 years today,
Hmm,
actually, of her
cool.
being sober. And so I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about when you decided to change your life a little bit. Can you talk to me about the changes, the changes of the people that were around you? Did you have that significantly? Because I kind of tell people when you change your life, usually you end up losing some people or you lose some things around you. Did you have that happen?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can get into the real shit here, right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
It's hard to say what a rock bottom looks like for, whatever else. So in my case, there is a genetic component
Mhm.
to alcohol, right? And I think in a lot of people's cases, I mean, it's part of humanity's history. I don't know.
Yeah,
One of the very first exchanges of work is actually daily rations for beer, and that goes back to the Sumerians. But all of that to say, like, my rock bottom involves an actual death, and that was my death, and I had an out of body experience, and I watched the nurse is, you know, shock me back to life,
mm,
and I was detached from my body, and all of the things that you've heard from a lot of people. That really did happen to me. Weirdly enough, that still wasn't really my last time, like openly, just like drinking that hard. Um, but at the end of that part of my life, it wasn't so much that people were around me as much as that I was isolated from anyone who loved me, who
yeah,
truly was, and I don't mean enabled me, because that can happen on accident a lot of times when people are trying to help you. Um, so the people that I would find myself around, like, hypothetically speaking, have you ever walked into like a, not a romantic, but like a real dive bar at 2 p.m. on a Sunday? You know what I mean?
yeah,
And that's people's lives. They're allowed to live it the way they
yeah,
want
yeah,
to.
yeah,
I know what that suffering is like. It's romantic, and it's just like feeling of being misunderstood. And if only you had lived through my tragedies and traumas, you would understand. And I actually, not actually, but I mean, I've had a lot in my lifetime that has primed me, with a lot of family death and a lot of stuff like that. And so at the end, anyone who was around me was not in a service to others kind of mode. It was like survival, like a pack of
yeah,
wolves, or whatever metaphor. Yeah, I think I've painted a clear enough picture, And so
yeah,
when that changed for me, um, I did end up in recovery rooms, and I don't go to AA as much as I did whenever I mean, I don't even go anymore, if I'm going to be honest. But the thing is, I had a person give me a hug after a meeting, a recovery based meeting, and I was so like,
yeah,
that later I spent a couple days truly sitting in the reality that I had not hugged another human being in maybe a couple years, you know. So and I couldn't. It's hard for me to really remember, but I can appreciate. I could not fathom at the time period why people were being nice or genuine to me.
yeah.
Um, and it just when it I had a sponsor, and actually the guy who plays drums right now in my band Groucho was one of the very first people who started coming around. I think he was like 6 months sober, so he was like on fire for like, let's change the world through sobriety. And
Yeah.
but he was the guy who really would come pick me up and take me to get a bite to eat. And yeah, I isolated really, really bad. So
Mm.
there wasn't really a lot of people around me, but it wasn't because I don't know. It was
Yeah.
really, really dark time in my life. It's been about, I think I'm coming up on 8 years, give or take, and that part of my life's over, and I'm
Congratulations
surrounded
on
by
that.
love and community
Yeah.
and all that.
Was it hard? And these are just things that we work on, and I absolutely enjoy our conversation. So,
Mm-hmm.
I often find that it's harder for us to let go of our prior version of ourselves, like that. That
Well, did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
no, you're good.
Could I speak on that?
Of
Because
course.
my biggest fear when I got like sober, and
Hmm.
to be clear, I have a healthy relationship with the occasional psychedelic or something like that in my time, but I teetotaled for a couple of years. I wasn't sure if I was like a full blown addict or whatever, however you want, whatever language you want to use. Okay, it was smart for me to just and that went for more than just physical substances. That went for like pornography or whatever, anything that like removed me from the way I
Yeah.
was feeling right now, which sometimes includes suffering. Um, I was terrified that I would not be who I am because my personality has always kind of been like the cut up or like the outrageous person, the
Yeah.
kid who was, capable of getting a laugh and all that stuff. And I thought I was going to be boring.
Hmm.
I thought my life was over, but I was so resigned and had that gift of desperation that I was more than willing to just go with it. And what's funny is that is not the case. Some
Yeah.
of my behavior has dramatically changed. That survival mode that takes place within a person whenever if something affects your security or
Hmm.
the scripts you give others or your personal relationships or your finances, it is easy to get backed into that like feral fear mode.
Yeah,
And I
for sure.
spent so much time there surviving, you
Yeah.
know, like I don't know how I'm going to eat dinner tonight kind of stuff.
Right.
That I did have a lot of um, mindset that needed to change, and that was shown to me rather than told to me. Like a
Yeah.
friend buying me food without some sort of hey, you can get me back Tuesday.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And I got kind of adopted in the community, and the recovery community is great about that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
They know, man, they've been there. The guy you're talking to who looks like he has shit together was screaming into the void, how many ever years or months ago or whatever,
Yeah.
cursing the sky and shaking his fist and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
I guess I'm saying I love where I've landed, and
Hmm.
I also love the metaphorical walking through the desert that took place to get me where I am personally.
Yeah, no, that's meaningful. Because, like I said, I have so many people within the community that have struggled with addiction and
Sure.
whatever, mental health, depression, like whatever, right? The struggles that we have as humans. And it's always so scary to take the step because what if, you're closing this chapter and you're hoping that you close it, but you still want to have some parts of you. But so many times, the people that were with you before, you're like, they're not going to love me the same. I'm not going to be
Mm-hmm.
the same person. I'm going to lose this. This is going to happen. But I love to see those other stories of how it does work because I've experienced grief in my life and different things like that. And you are not the same person. So of course you have to kind of sever ties with who you used to be. You don't have to lose all of it, but there's a good portion that's going away, you know.
Yeah. Well, if your relationship with those people a lot of times is just commiseration,
Yeah.
then yeah, I mean, but what's funny is that you can be a vehicle for that individual if and when they get to the place where they need
Yeah.
whatever. I've become like the death guy because in my lifetime, I have somehow managed to bury three parents
Mm,
and a stepsister and grandma, yada, yada, yada. And
yeah.
I'll see a person every now and then who they're losing like their first person
Yeah.
and they call Dustin, right? And
Yeah.
that is a weird, but also kind of like, I'm not going to say delightful. It's
Mm,
almost like a compliment, that they need advice, and so they come and I couldn't provide any of that if I was fucked up all the time.
yeah.
When I was all the time, I'm only capable of focusing on myself. And the secret to life, if you want to try to boil it down, I believe is choosing between a service to something greater than yourself or
Mm,
serving yourself. I mean, and that can look like a million things, like raising kids or being involved in
sure.
a community or whatever.
Yeah, I connect so much with the grief. I have had significant loss and I love to bring, of course, tools. I'm a tool person. Like I'm not going to do it for you, but I'm going to tell you what you could do.
Sure.
and and grief is just one of those things. So I always take people on the journey of my closest person that I lost was my brother, and I lost him due to drugs. And
Yeah.
I was with him when he passed, and it was the worst day of my life. But
Yeah.
it turned into the most amazing journey for me. Like truly, I got my death doula certification. I got to, I've got to help so many people uh plan out their legacy and live their life, right? And not
Yeah.
just stop living. And so I love that. I hate that you're that person, but I love that you're that person because I can understand that people are grasping for someone to help, and it's like it's something everybody goes through, and
Yeah.
we're not immune to it, but so many people don't know how to go through it, and I'm grateful that I've had those experiences to be able to help
Yeah, I agree. A lot of
now.
times people just need to know it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you're a testament. You didn't ask to be, but like,
right.
behold, a wonder. My life is trucking on, and I'm not
Yeah.
only happy, but positive.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it just changes who you are. It doesn't. I often describe grief as a backpack of bricks that you always carry, and that sometimes it gets heavy, but
that's
it's you get used to it.
that's crazy because I have a very similar metaphor about chugging rocks through a desert.
Ah,
And just, well, some of those rocks are shit you don't need anymore.
right.
And you said you're a tool person, and so
Hmm.
if you don't have the tools to remove that rock, then
Yeah.
you're going to drag it forever. But grief is 100% a rock that you probably shouldn't set down. You could carry it because it becomes lighter,
Yeah.
and it's a reminder of where you have been and where you're going, and it's invaluable.
Yeah, it really is. It is something that we all go through, and some people shut it out and they don't see
Yeah.
it coming, and you see the train coming and you're
Oh
just
yeah, here it
waiting
comes.
to
Yeah.
like it's gonna be bad, but it gets better. I always tell people it doesn't go away. You don't heal. Like I wouldn't say
Hmm.
you heal fully from it, but you do learn to live and you help people. And if you can find meaning in the things that you're doing, I think that that's the best potential thing that you could do to make all the things you've been through worth it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What do you guys have coming up? Do you have any new things coming up?
We kind of hit that phase where, like, playing in a band that is a serious group, whatever that means. You kind of have to create, and then you have to display.
Hmm.
So we just came off of a big display year where we had recorded, X amount of songs and music videos, and we try to go out our way to make really high quality production. People, if you want people's attention in the year 2025, that's what's happening. You need to be able to
Yeah.
keep up. And we're moving into let's finish writing this record. So I know that we're trying to put out a vinyl in ideally, like May would be a realistic timeline, but I'm trying to partner with a friend of mine who is a graphic novelist, and, he's published, and we're thinking about releasing like a comic book with
Mm.
our, our album. And the problem is not the logistics. It's been me trying to settle on subject matter,
Sure.
because I do want to use the platform to make people like recognize what's at stake.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that without sounding pretentious, or
I
like you're
understand.
offering, yeah, like I'm not even offering answers.
Right.
I'm trying to show questions. So we've flirted around with, like, well, is it a non-human intelligence contact moment? Is it like a farmer in a field? And so I'm still kind of working on that idea, but that's the next big thing that we have is, a vinyl,
Mm.
and some media that functions more as art than it does as like Spotify plays. I mean,
Sure.
we do really well online. I'm really grateful for that. We have these like communities in Sao Paulo, Brazil, or like Iceland, for whatever reason, that people just love our music. I mean, we get 10,000 monthly, listeners and stuff. And I
Nice.
mean, I couldn't even begin to describe what that means to me as a person, writing a song. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Uh, so I want to try to elevate it and connect a little more and offer something, a little bit beyond like a song. And so that's our next thing. And what it's going to look like, I'm a firm believer that you don't even have to really know to get started. You were
Oh
talking
yeah.
about a bus, or whatever,
Yeah.
and it'll propel you where you need to go. It really will,
Yeah.
if you lean in and you trust it. and you're not making a master plan. That was the biggest takeaway I
Yeah.
had in recovery mindset, was that I was always, if everything was just so, and if I could just, and if this right here,
Oh
blah blah blah
yeah.
blah blah, and it was just like trying to build a sandcastle in a hurricane, man.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, dude.
Yeah,
You know,
I just kind of go, I always say I'm a vessel for the universe really, and this podcast is something that just randomly I've always wanted to do one, and I think initially when you and I talked I was like I really have no idea what I'm doing. I just feel very very called to do it, and it just really I say blew up. It's not obviously huge yet, but I think it
whatever.
has potential to do so many things, and the fact that it gives people a space, even musicians, a space to say, hey, I'm a real person. I have real shit. I go through
Hmm.
real stuff. And it allows, fans and things like that to connect. And it's not, it was so unexpected to even do. So I'm kind of just open to wherever it leads. I just know that I definitely want to be a part of the bigger picture of helping people. And so that's what I always want to use my platform for. So
I love that. I mean,
thank you.
genuinely, and yeah, those are the people I. It's not a coincidence that you and I are trying to talk to each other on some of
Yeah,
this stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
and I find that myself in those situations all the time, and it's absurd and it's beautiful, and I just lean into it.
I
You
agree.
know,
I agree. I was like, it's so refreshing. I love talking, but I was like, ooh, you're one of my people. That makes me so excited.
yeah,
So,
happy to be here.
well, I love to end the podcast on if you have someone, a friend, someone comes to you and they are struggling significantly. What is some words of wisdom that you could give to them to get them through or to just give them a tool to help guide them into the next day?
So, can I reference one of our song titles?
You 100% can.
We have a song called "TV in the Bedroom," and it's in parentheses, "You're not a tragic person."
Hmm.
And I know that is nearly impossible to see in a moment of crisis. But for me, my words of wisdom do revolve around gratitude
Hmm.
and recognizing, you know. So, like, I think the statistic is truly, if you have a TV, if you have an air conditioner, and you have a refrigerator, you're in the top, like, X% of the world's, like, amenities, So, and it's like 1% of people too. That is a really good way to piss a person off who's going through a moment. I've been in that moment
Yeah.
and stuff. So besides listening, my advice is generally understanding, is trying to help that individual understand the power of connection
Yeah.
and the power of, like, you came to me and you're sharing with me right now, and that is just like intensely vulnerable thing.
Hmm.
But the moment that takes place, I believe the ability and the opportunity for change can present itself.
Hmm.
Because for me, when I was at my most isolated, when I was at the worst part of my life, I was convinced that it was happening to me,
Hmm.
as opposed to I'm a participant in this construct matrix, whatever, and
Yeah.
try not to even define it. But I think that there's value in helping nudge, a friend, an enemy,
Yeah.
to that reality of, like, my life is easier and better and more fulfilled when I am not focusing on my own little bullshit.
Yeah.
But that is nearly impossible whenever something truly happens to an individual. So a lot of times, it's just the old adage of gratitude.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wish I had a more elegant way to kind of open up about that, but
No, it's true. I discuss gratitude a lot, and I'll precursor by saying like I have my own struggles, and I'll tell everybody that I could tell you answers because they're not like necessarily always guided from myself, but being grateful attracts more gratefulness in. And so if you get stuck in your cave and I call the cave the
I
depression
get the
cave.
cave.
If
Oh yeah.
you get stuck in your cave and you stay there, then that's what you're going to bring in is more heaviness. If you can get someone to check on you and, extend their hand, then for goodness sake, take it because there's so much good here. And it feels like sometimes there's nothing good here, but there's so many amazing parts of life and we miss out on it because we're not
Yeah.
grateful for the small things, really.
And that's been my armor for fighting the woe is meism, you
Yeah.
know. because you said you've had a lot of grief in your life. I genuinely have too, man. I get
Yeah.
it. But if I can just focus my mind on the reality of like I have a person to tell about this, right? Or,
Yeah.
I have people in that are counting on me
Yeah.
for whatever that means. It can just be showing up and setting up chairs at a recovery meeting, but that
Yeah.
purpose and that reason to get out of bed is usually what you can cling to until
Yeah.
I mean, you have to do the work and you have to unpack and you need to understand, but holy shit, you're not going to do that right now. Like
Yeah.
right now, what's the next right thing to do?
Right.
And
Sometimes it's
that's,
second to second. Like, what am I
yeah,
going to do the next second? Yeah.
I've been there. I genuinely have, and I think all of us in our lifetime, what kind of life would it be to live without adversary
Oh,
or struggle?
yeah.
I mean, is that really what you want?
We're not grateful now. Can you imagine how ungrateful we'd be if everything was always happy?
And in my experience, a lot of the times, the people that I do know that, not necessarily economically, but just they've never had any like real bullshit in their lifetime.
Yeah.
They seem to have I wouldn't say they're fulfilled. I'm not
Yeah.
going to try to describe what they are, but yeah,
Mm.
I mean, you
I love
need
that you use that word.
fulfilled.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot. I was like, I can be happy sitting on the couch every night watching TV, eating dinner, and going to bed. I'm fine. I'm happy, but I'm not fulfilled. That doesn't
There,
fulfill me.
there is a difference, yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
purpose, and
Yeah.
I mean, the last thing that I want to say on that subject, I think, is that for a long time, I thought that you were supposed to discover the meaning of life.
Hmm.
I think we all deal with that. And where I'm at and have been for a long time is recognizing that you are supposed to create
Yeah.
your meaning of life. There is no like universal, well, you need to do this and you need to do that.
Yeah.
There is no meaning of life. You get to assign meaning to your life. And if you don't do that actively, it will happen to you passively.
Okay. Well,
And that is, just what's happening.
yeah,
And
you might as well. I'll say you might as well have a hand in it, right? You might as well have a hand in the decisions and the things that you're going to do in life, because if not, it's going to be made for you. You're going to walk down a path, so you might as well like jump in and participate and be like the main character in your story.
Sure. If we're lucky, we get that opportunity to
Yeah.
reach in and say, well, this is no longer serving me.
Yeah.
And, and I'm going to reevaluate what's, the autopilot that has led me to this moment
Yeah.
or, whatever else.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on. This has been really great. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Authentic Life with KL, where we explore the powerful intersection of healing and music. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give a follow and share with your friends. You can find more information about The Authentic Life with KL and Kitty Lynne at kittylynne.com, KITTYLYNNE.com. Thanks so much for listening.